Hello my friends, Mia DeBolt here, bringing you more transparency in trading. Thank you so much for joining me on day 10 and 11 of my FTMO Repeat Challenge number 2. I think what's really important today is really to focus on what those 3 things are that you do when you're in drawdown or you have a losing streak. Because when it comes to trading success, 80% happens right here and happens in your heart. And really when it comes down to having some down days, you really don't want to stay there too long so that you can stop it and really start trading effectively again. So spoiler alert, days 10 and 11 did not turn out very well for me, and I learned a lot of lessons from them. So I hope that you learn through my mistakes and through my lessons learned, and then that way you can apply that to your trading and not do that as well. All right, so without further ado, let's dive into day 10, which was Thursday, and you can see the trades that I took. Okay, so my thinking was that we were going to be bearish because the DXY was pushing up, and so that was kind of what I was thinking about. However, the morning order flow to me seemed more bullish. Okay, so this brings us to a little bit of where I was expecting price to go. So we didn't make any lower lows, and so I was expecting more bullishness. And so I had my buy side set up. We had equal highs here, and so that's kind of where I was expecting price to go into this inefficiency above. All right, so I had a 1-minute breaker and a 5-minute breaker, and so I did move my entry up here because I felt like we had already reached that 5-minute breaker, and so that's kind of where I made my first mistake, was just moving my price up, and you can see that it was not even at the 50% mark of the swing. So it wasn't even 50% of that swing. There was a 15-minute imbalance down below, and so that is another mistake that I made. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward this because I was in this for 1%. It was a fairly quick trade because it accumulated here. I had 0.5% on both of those, and I did buy when price was going down. However, there was so much bearishness that that should have been a red flag altogether. Okay, so we did have that 5-minute order block that I was expecting to hold price up. It didn't, and so instead of actually closing these out and saving some of my capital, I just watched price go to my stop losses. So I did trim risk a little bit and I did save a little capital. However, I did end up losing 0.96%. Okay, because we were continuing down, I did feel like maybe we were bearish, and so that's kind of where I was looking at the 6 sister approach with NASDAQ, and I missed this push down. So both indices were in tandem, they were going down together. However, they both didn't make a lower low, and so there was divergence. NASDAQ was the strongest of all 3, and so to sell the strongest when we're not really in a bearish environment was kind of risky. Okay, so the ES was just filling that 1-minute fair value gap below the algorithm open, so that was a great place to buy, and we're starting to accumulate. So on both of the indices, we started to accumulate, and so I moved my entry down again for the NASDAQ, and I sold in an up candle. So that was the good thing. I did do the proper procedures of buying and selling. However, it just was not my day. So this goes up and down, and it does break market structure. It fills that inefficiency, and it does not break the market structure down here. So that was just another indication, another warning sign that I was offsides, and it did end up closing out my stop. I did play a little chicken with the stop loss again, and I trimmed my risk, and I ended up losing 0.9% on that trade. And so I lose 1.69% for the day. And so what did I do correctly was I actually had the fundamentals. So I actually bought in a down close candle and I sold in a up close candle. So I had those fundamentals down. However, I was just on the wrong side. I moved my entries to where price was as opposed to waiting and being patient. So one of the things that I did journal was that I only had 6 hours of sleep, and it was broken up sleep. So I woke up around 2 or 3 and couldn't go back to sleep, and then kind of woke up after falling back asleep a little bit more. So those are things that I like to journal and make sure that I'm tracking, so that if I actually have a recurring theme, then I implement some rules and make sure that that goes into my trade plan. So at the end of the day, I had still 3.05% profit, and so that's what I went into Friday on day 11 with. Now Friday was pretty special because it's the last day of the month, and I really like the last days of the month because there's typically a lot of movement, and typically it's in one direction. Why do I know this? Because I've back tested and I've traded enough last last Fridays of the month to actually know that my pair actually moves quite a bit and we have one-sided direction. Okay, so that's what I was coming into Friday with. However, one thing that I have to note is that it was the second consecutive day of lack of sleep. So on Friday, I actually went to sleep later and I woke up at the same time. So I had 5 hours of sleep, and that just completely is a red flag for me. However, I didn't actually do anything about it, and so that was mistake number 1. So mistake number 2 was actually going against the morning trend. And so what I've found in the past couple of weeks is that any kind of counter trend trade that I take against the morning trend typically ends in a loss for me. And so obviously that's something that I'm going to do differently moving forward. And so with mistakes comes lessons. If we actually look at the gifts that are given to us in trading, all of the mistakes that we make are actually lessons packaged in work. So when I go and backtest, these are things that I'm going to implement in my trade plan moving forward, and they're also things that I'm going to create rules around. So I woke up a little bit early on Friday, and so with that, I was actually on the charts for the 5:30 red folder news. So I typically like to wait until after the New York Stock Exchange open, the equity open at 6:30 Pacific Standard Time. However, I was on the charts. I was really looking for a quick win, maybe even to recoup what I had previously lost on Thursday. So that kind of mindset already is kind of red flags, because having little sleep tends to end in impulsivity for me, tends to end in over trading for me. And those are all things that I kind of took out of my plan because I had kind of gotten over that hump and I had stopped over trading. I felt like I was really in control. However, when it comes to lack of sleep and you're just not clear in the mind, you can end up behaving differently and seeing that only in retrospect. All right, so this is what I had in mind for the morning, and we did have a bullish push up. However, I was expecting some more bearishness, and to be completely honest, I was thinking that because we had already broken the mean threshold of the daily candle on the S&P, that we were going to go for the daily lows, and we were going to go for the daily equal lows that day. All right, so I did watch the institutional order flow video from ICT, and he was going on the 15 second, so I just got curious and started looking at the 15 second, and it is something that I might do in the future because there's a lot more inefficiencies. I do like to trade inefficiencies, and it does show a lot more granularity, but it's something that I do have to train my eye to. So you can see here that this 15-second volume imbalance actually created some resistance and we pushed down. So I was liking that and I was just watching that. So this was the news. It did spike up and filled that volume imbalance and actually used it as resistance. And so that's where I do see on the 1 minute there is a 1 minute fair value gap, and so that's where I enter. So there's a bearish order block here, and so that's where I sell. So it was a little bit late. It wasn't quite the 1 minute candle. I am on the 15 second, and so there is a little bit more of the fair value gap up there. Okay, so I'm in this for 1%. So it does move nicely down. I'm in some profit. However, I'm not thinking partials. I'm not thinking of anything but bearishness. And again, this is lack of sleep, just not really anticipating exactly what price might do and planning for that. Okay, so we do come into a bullish order block, and so this is where price starts to stall and does start to retrace. So fortunately, I am also trimming my risk. So it comes back fairly quickly to that order block. I'm expecting more bearishness. However, it does end up continuing up. So instead of extending down and passing through that 1 minute fair value gap, it starts to continue up. So again, some more warning signs that I might be offsides. Okay, and then now it's starting to create 1 minute fair value gaps to the upside and 15-second fair value gaps to the upside. And so I just close it out manually. So I'm at 0.29%, and I am really glad that I did, because this does end up continuing up, and I would have lost a full 1% had I not closed that out. So I start the day with negative 0.29%. I think the potential for this trade was actually 0.73%, and so that could have been a really quick win, and I could have just walked away for the rest of the day, maybe even tried to take a nap. All right, so we're coming into the New York Equity Open, so we're really close to that. And this is where, again, I'm very fixated on selling. So I was anticipating that maybe just because the short-term high was taken, that we are going to start extending down and start taking some sell side. And so this is where I do have a very conservative 10 pip stop, and we broke that market structure. However, we have this 5-minute fair value gap from the New York Open, and so it is kind of acting as support. It doesn't make a lower low. I am just seeing this as a bearish flag. So I'm in this for 2%. So I do have to note that I upped my risk because I was kind of impatient as far as recouping my losses, and that was kind of the thinking behind my thinking. So I didn't explicitly say that, but it was something that was going through my head, and so that's something that I have to be completely transparent about, and that is the reason that I'm in this for 2%. All right, so again, it doesn't break that market structure. I am looking at that as a 1-minute breaker, and that's kind of what I was expecting price to actually do, is just run away from that 1-minute breaker, run away from that 1-minute fair value gap. However, price doesn't end up doing that. So it's using that 5-minute fair value gap as support, and it doesn't actually go through that 530 fair value gap. And so this is just warning signs that I need to actually take into account and backtest. All right, so we're already up here. We took that daily high, and I felt like we could just continue down. So I didn't move my stop at all, so I was still in this trade. I could have closed it out at 1.09%, and I probably should have in retrospect, but I was looking at this type of price action, and we almost went down to my actual break even, and then we went and did this. So again, I could have just closed out at 0.88%, and I was just trying to study price action, see what it was doing. The minute it actually went above that 1-minute fair value gap and closed above it, that's also another indication that we're going to continue up. So again, I could have closed out there at 1.19%, but I didn't, and that was a loss of 2%. So I just stayed in this, was really fixated on that bearishness, and it wasn't showing me bearishness anymore. All right, so I'm going to fast forward this because it was a full 2% that I lost, and I believe because of spreads, it was a little bit more than that. And so again, this is just another indication that I was tired and really not thinking clearly, and so I should have just walked away for the entire day. So that's another thing that I learned, is not only am I going to have a rule that if I have less than 6.5 hours of sleep, then I'm not going to trade that day. And another rule is that I just close out when that 1-minute fair value gap is disrespected. All right, so I'm at negative 2.37 for the day, and this is where I do feel like we're bullish now. So this is, my bias is now switched to bullishness, and I am feeling like this open range gap up here is going to be what is going to be the draw on liquidity. So no longer do I feel like we're going to actually come down and fill this one. We're actually going to reach up and fill this open range gap. All right, so here's where I am looking to buy, and we're coming into the 7 o'clock macro. So I am looking to buy, and I have a conservative 6.5 pip stop loss. And so this is kind of where, having come on 2 losses, already being at my max loss for the day, it was not boding well. So this type of price action, I really don't like that, and quite frankly, it kind of scares me out of a trade. So I didn't close it there. However, I do end up thinking that we might be coming down for this imbalance down here, because we are kind of high in this expansion, and so it definitely could have taken some of the sell side before running up. So I am looking at all different factors, and I end up just trimming my risk a little bit more, and it ends up hitting my stop. So you can see here that it actually turns around and never would have hit my stop. And that's just, again, another function of being overtired and underslept. All right, so now I'm at 2.76% loss. I'm at 0.3% for my balance altogether, and it's just not a really great day. I'm on a losing streak, and so again, this is just another reason to implement those rules, follow those rules that are in my trade plan. They're in there for a reason, and they are there to protect my capital. So like I said in my previous video, protecting my capital is my number one rule, and I just threw that rule out the window that day. Okay, so this is where I walk away from the charts. I do a little pep talk to myself, because really when it comes down to a losing streak, the way I break my losing streaks, and the number one reason that I can actually bounce back after a losing trade or a losing day or a losing week and actually recover my accounts and be profitable, is because I give myself love and grace, and I look for something to be grateful for. So I was grateful for still having 0.3% in my account. I was grateful for having the skill set to actually look and trade profitably. Although all my trades are not profitable, I do have winning trades. And then also love and grace. So what does love and grace mean? It means taking a break. It means shaking it off. It means actually maybe giving yourself some of that love and that appreciation that others would give you if you're looking to console somebody. So that's kind of the love and grace that I'm talking about, because when it comes to trading, there's going to be ups and downs. And so if you can't give yourself love and grace, you certainly won't get that from the outside world. So this is what I came back to with the mindset that I'm just going to do one last trade. And so with this one last trade, I did look at the price action. I came back and it was still bullish, and I would have had a winning trade had I just studied that price action right there. That 1 minute fair value gap was being respected, so was that one. Okay, so with that, I did have a more conservative stop, and I had a 10 pip stop here. I'm also looking at the 15-second, and we also had a new week open gap and the Tuesday, Wednesday opening range gap. So that was the low of that, and so I was expecting some more bullishness, and so I bought there. Okay, so we had that new week open gap low, and so that was what I bought off of the 15-second, because we did have a bullish order block here as well. So my ultimate target and goal was above that open range gap. So this is where price just kind of goes back and forth, but it does end up extending up and giving me the signs that we are continuing bullish. All right, so I like that fair value gap as we're breaking that market structure. And so I am expecting this to go up. I only have 0.5% on this. And so this is kind of where I didn't maximize my profits because I had already lost so much during the day. So I had already cut my risk in half. 0.5% is really the minimum that I like to have in the market. And so I'm just managing this trade manually. So price does end up closing the entire open range gap, and then it kind of consolidates a little bit more. And so it does continue up. I have a potential of 1%, and that's a nice 2-to-1 so far, but now it's starting to make market structure shifts and consolidate. Okay, so I am just watching where this fair value gap is kind of going up and down. And so I'm watching that, thinking of actually taking half of it off and having half of my position just locked in, but I don't end up doing that because I am just in this for 0.5%, and so I'd rather just close all of it together. And so it does oscillate back and forth, has kind of a trend line right there, and I don't like that because it does end up taking that trend line to the downside. I trail my stop, and so my stop is in profit. It's right there at maybe the new week open gap high, and so this is the current new week open gap, and so it's likely to come back down, which it does, so I end up closing it out. So now I'm at 1.03% for my account, which is a great kind of recoup. I can end my day with a win, and so that always feels good to go into the weekend, even if I had a losing streak, to actually come back and recoup a little bit. So price does come back down, and it does bounce off of that current new week open gap and then continues up again. I don't end up buying that again because we are in such a premium that I'm not quite sure how far up we are going to go on a Friday. And it's also a Friday going into a 3-day holiday weekend. So I do try to take a nap, and for some reason I can't take naps anymore. So with that being said, I wake up out of my comatose and I think, okay, the last hour macro, maybe I can recoup some more. So again, the lack of sleep is really not kicking in as far as what my rule should be, which is just walk away. You gotta win, be happy and grateful for that win. So I do log in. The last hour macro starts around 12:15 Pacific Standard Time. So I am at my computer for that, and I'm expecting kind of some bearishness. And so I'm expecting the algorithm to start repricing to short-term lows because we are at a premium and we have been going up all day long. Okay, so this is where I jump into the market again. So one last time, the 5th trade of the day, which is totally over trading for me. And I'm at negative 2%, which is my max loss for the day. So I should be just walking away. However, I jump in one more time. And so this is kind of what I see. We did take out a short-term low and we did make a 1 minute fair value gap. We also have 5-minute volume imbalances up here that I want to lay candles over, and so this is where I do end up buying. Okay, so once we dip into this 1 minute fair value gap, this is where I'm end up buying, and I have a 5 pip stop loss. Okay, so here you can see the 5-minute volume imbalances. We also have a 15-minute volume imbalance down below and a 5-minute fair value gap that can be used as support. And so this is just another indication of how tired I am and not really thinking rationally. This isn't even 50% of the swing itself where I'm actually buying. So it really is not a great place to buy. I'm buying in a premium. And so this is where this trade actually goes awry very quickly. So I love when trades go awry really quickly because I don't have to wait very long and it's not playing with my emotions as far as going up and going down and maybe giving me some profit and some hope and then turning around and actually stopping me out. So I do trim my risk, and that's a good thing. And this is another thing where, because I wasn't really thinking clearly and I was still at the end of a very long day, I thought that I was in this for 1%. However, because I didn't check, it was only 0.5%. All right, so price does end up going down. It's not running away from that 1 minute fair value gap or respecting that 5-minute bullish order block. And so we are consolidating. It does take my stop very quickly, and it does come down all the way down to this 5-minute fair value gap and this 15-minute volume imbalance. So I walk away. I'm done with the day, and I'm really disappointed in my actions and my behaviors. However, I have to absolutely dust that off. So if we continue to stay in that zone of disappointment and in that emotional state of beating ourselves up or judging ourselves or woulda, coulda, shoulda, then we are going to continue that slide down. All right, so let's real quick look at my account. And so I do have a downward kind of trend right now. However, I'm on day 11. I still have 0.56% to be grateful for. And so I'm still in profit. And so you can see here my trades. And so Thursday's buys were all losses. My sells were losses, and one buy was a loss as well because I closed that out early. And then this buy was a loss as well because I was buying in a premium. All right, so those are lessons to learn as I backtest. And so that brings me to the 3 things that you absolutely must do in order to stop any kind of losing streak, and then also to recover from drawdown. All right, so number 1, I touched on already, which is to give yourself love and grace and gratitude. So if you can find the gratitude, find the gifts in the lessons that you've learned, and actually go back through your videos, go back through your trades, go back through your journal and back test and see what you might do differently. So some of the things that I might do differently is absolutely get more sleep, implement my rule of no trading if I don't get 6.5 hours of sleep, and then also going with the morning trend, really waiting for that evidence, waiting for the actual 1 hour structure is something that I might do differently as well. The last thing that I absolutely learned from my trading on Thursday and Friday is that really only 2 or 3 trades maximum. So it doesn't even matter if it's 1 or 2%. I will stop at 1 or 2 trades. So if I'm offsides, then I'm offsides and I walk away for the day and I reset for the next day. So on Friday, I should have walked away from the charts altogether and had a 4-day weekend. How great would that have been? Because I would have been at 3.05% and I could have started next week with a lot more bullets. All right, so I did promise 3 things. So 1 was love, grace, and gratitude. 2 was back testing. So going through and looking at the trades specifically that you actually lost and really digging in and finding reasons of why it actually lost. All right, number 3, the 3rd thing to do to stop a backward slide or a losing streak or to recover from drawdown is to actually go through and watch those videos or review trades that you've actually won. So review those trades, look at the greatness that you've actually accomplished in the past. And so I've done this in the past, is recovered a couple of accounts that were already in drawdown, and I can tell you with complete certainty that it absolutely works. When you come into this space, into a new week, having known that you can accomplish what you can accomplish because you've done it in the past, and you tap into that greatness that you've already showed to yourself in the past, you can absolutely move forward with more power and more certainty that you can actually do that again. All right, my friends, I hope you got value from this. I know that losing streaks and losing days never feel good. However, if you can find the gift in those, that's absolutely how you build that muscle and you continue to move forward with more strength and more power. That's what I plan on doing, showing up next week as the trader that I know I can be. And so I'm going to be implementing some new rules, and I'll share those with you as I continue to trade and evolve as a trader. So my friends, make sure that you're subscribing below if you're enjoying these type of videos, not just the wins, but also the losing days, because those come with so many lessons and so many gifts. All right, my friends, thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to sharing the next trade with you. Till the next trade, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.